Good evening, 7:33. Call this meeting of the school committee to order for May 6th, 2013. Ray Estes, vice chair, acting to run the meeting as we hold elections, as we do the first meeting after the town election. And all of you should have received a ballot over the weekend from Dr. Gallo. 3 positions, chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. We'll go first to chair, then to vice chair, then to secretary. The votes are required by roll call vote individually. So we might as well just begin with that. So on the ballot for chairman is myself. We'll start at the end. Liza, you get the privilege of voting first.
Newbie.
On your first evening.
No.
Ray Estes.
So you could do a yay or a yes or a no. That's
Oh,
what
yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I say yay for Ray. Would mention that an individual has put as much time, effort, and energy in to this point, deserves it. I'm happy that he's thrown his hat in the ring. Yay.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. For vice chairman, Carol M. Falvey. Liza?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes again. People have worked hard and have that experience. I'm in favor of that. Yay.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
And for secretary, we have 2 names on the ballot. Unfortunately, Dennis had to fly out of town on business. Dennis Friedman did not have the opportunity to be here. And Andy Shafter also up for secretary. So we'll go in order as they're listed on the ballot. Dennis Friedman first.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Andy Shafter.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No. So we have a 3-3 tie. Review of the policy does not address the event of a tie with respect to the elections. Interestingly, that might be something that the policy subcommittee will take up, probably one of the first things this year. My recommendation would be that we reconvene the election of secretary at our next scheduled meeting, which is the 13th, when we have an opportunity for a full complement of the school committee to be present. Does anyone oppose that recommendation?
Would you care to repoll in case people, as reality sets in, they may have changed their mind? Is that possible?
We certainly could revote if you think we should.
It'd be nice to get it finished tonight.
Okay. So we'll go back. Dennis Friedman.
No.
Are we voting?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
No.
No.
Yes for Dennis.
Yes. So it looks like
That's a
we're
good point.
in the same position. So as I said, my recommendation would be that we reconvene next Monday on the 13th, when we plan to have an additional meeting and hold the vote again at that time.
Good. I think we should move on.
Okay. Okay, just a little housekeeping. Some of you haven't been here before. We started publicly televising our meetings and recording our meetings intermittently last year, and this year we have been either recording or live, televising live our meetings in virtually every instance, and your comments cannot be picked up unless you speak into a microphone and are recognized by the camera. So what we do is we ask individuals who would like to speak, they need to be recognized by the chair. They need to come up to the podium with a microphone, state their name and address, and their question or comment. Typically, public comment would be limited to the issue at hand at the moment. We do have a section in the agenda every week for items of a general nature that are not necessarily on the agenda. But if we could follow that protocol with respect to public comment, and I suspect we will have some back and forth this evening, that would be terrific. Okay, so with that, we'll turn to the rest of our agenda. We have minutes to approve. Regular session of April 29th, and in the absence of the secretary, Assistant Superintendent Ellen Keene generally takes notes for the meetings in any event, so we'll certainly continue that practice, and
I'll help.
And
For
Carol will pick up the slack. So we have regular session minutes for April 29th, 2013. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'd so move.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, questions, comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have executive session minutes from April 29th, 2013. Just a refresher on Robert's rules, and I think everyone here knows these. Robert's rules don't require that we make motions to approve minutes, but that is our custom, so we will do that with respect to minutes for which you were not present. You may vote for them, but you can also feel free to abstain. Just because you were not present at the meeting for which the minutes were taken does not disqualify you from voting for those minutes, but you certainly may abstain if you choose to. So we have minutes for executive session, April 29th, 2013. Can I have a motion, please?
So move.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Student communications. I don't see our student communicator here this evening. Okay. Moving on to item 4, other communications. Dot, do we have?
No, we know.
Haven't received anything? Okay. Number 5, questions and comments. This is an opportunity if there's a non-agenda item that anyone in the public would like to comment or pose a question on. No? Okay. Move on to new business, item number 6. Subcommittee assignment process and timeline 6.1. You all should have at your places another copy of the current subcommittee assignments that Dr. Gallo has updated to reflect the elimination of a liaison or a member of the ad hoc high school fields committee and a liaison to the government study committee, because that committee no longer exists. I think, as Dr. Gallo has indicated, if you could provide your thoughts about what subcommittees you might want to participate on, what subcommittees you think you might have strengths, particular skills, abilities, interest. Provide those in writing to the chairman by Wednesday. We will do our best and should succeed in giving out new subcommittee assignments by next Monday.
Right.
Okay.
Dr. Geller, why did you cross off the liaison to the proposed SPED study committee?
That should not be crossed off. What should have been crossed off there was in error. Sorry, I didn't pick up the liaison that was listed was Paul, but the actual liaison is Dennis, with the Paul is as ex officio. So I asked her to update that. I believe that she simply crossed out. But I'm glad you noticed that there definitely is a committee. I don't think the membership is going to change. However, it is there and the committee is still functioning. But thank you for noticing that.
Okay, so,
And we also did add on there a liaison to CPAC. That was a request they had made earlier, and we suggested waiting until we reorganized, and so that is new.
okay. 6.2 is the school calendar for 2013-2014. So that's in your folders.
It's rather typical in terms of vacation periods. The holidays, the Christmas and New Year's Day holidays are both on Wednesday this year, so that's always a discussion about which way we should go, and certainly the consensus among most of my peer superintendents and also our own administrative team is that we allow the vacation to start on the Friday prior, but that we return to school on the day after New Year's Day, which would be on the 2nd. So that's the only thing that's a little bit different from the.
I think you've probably made a lot of kids happy with this
Yes.
vacation schedule.
Right. I think the concern was we don't go to school at all, ever, on the day before Christmas, and therefore that would leave only the Monday of that
Right.
week, and the concern was about attendances.
Sure.
We had school on that one day.
Can I have a question?
Mhm.
Do we have an election November 5th this year? Is
No,
that-
we don't. We did
Okay.
check on that, and there is not one.
Good.
And therefore, we don't have the Tuesday or
Right.
early, or late starts.
So do we need a motion?
Yeah, we need to approve this, so we do need a motion
Okay.
to approve this calendar.
I'll make a motion that the committee approve the 2013-2014 school calendar as proposed by Dr. Gallo.
Second.
The motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Great. 6.3 is to establish June 20th as the last day of school for students, and June 21st is the last day for faculty. We had to add 4 days
We did have
to the
4
school year
days.
as a result of various weather events this past fall and winter.
One hurricane day and 2 snow days, yes.
So unfortunately, we do have to extend the school year in order to have the required 180 days for everybody.
And that's actually why you have to vote, because last year at this time, you voted on the beginning and the ending day, and the ending day is different from what you voted last year.
Right, next year will be the 16th, okay. So could I have a motion, please, to establish June 20th, 2013 as the last day of school for the current school year, and the 21st as the last day for faculty?
So moved.
And second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, 6.4 is an update on the field project fundraising and to act on our acceptance of donations. So we do have a little bit of an update to share. Warren Pelsier is here from the Hingham Sports Partnership in the audience. My understanding, and Warren, did you want to join us up here? So obviously, the fundraising effort has been going on for a number of months with various folks involved. And with a number of possibilities in mind for the use of these funds. As you'll hear shortly, we're going to be discussing bids. Bids for the Fields project came in a little bit higher than we had anticipated. And as a result, the private fundraising is important, even more important than perhaps we initially thought. So my understanding, Warren, is I think we're up to, in private fundraising dollars to date, pledged $739,000.
That's correct.
It's terrific.
Great.
And I know Warren, because I've spoken to him recently, most of those private donors are prepared to deliver checks.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, some have already done so over the weekend. The rest will complete their pledges this week. So,
Fabulous.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's great.
And I think there are maybe a couple, 2 or 3 donors perhaps for which a letter of credit or some other facility is necessary based on the schedule of the donations to be made.
That's correct. So Ray, and the rest of the school committee, the requests were made by a number of donors if they could stretch it over a year. And in another case, into 4 separate payments. And when that was posed to Ted Alexiados, he suggested that that would be no problem, as long as we received either a letter of credit and or a line of credit that we could access, and those are forthcoming from those folks. It's not a lot of people.
Great. Did you want to talk a little bit about maybe some additional efforts that might be ongoing?
Sure. Just like anything, it starts with plan. So we started out having no feel, no understanding of actually what was going to happen, how the town was going to vote, even up into the last minutes. We did not understand exactly what was going to be voted on. So we asked a lot of people to trust in blind faith to donate their money towards this project. And to that end, we raised $730,000 in about 4.5 weeks, which I think is it's an outstanding thing that happens in this town, and I think we all owe our townspeople a very our dedication to their commitment to making this project happen. We also made sure that we reached wider and deeper. So we ran a big green event that was sold out in less than a week and a half. We sold over 500 tickets to the event that was completely sold out. Andy did a fantastic job at putting together a seat sales, and we've sold a number of seats. So that's worked out well. So we also know that we've done. So Ray says, so what have you done for us recently? And
in a nice
now,
way.
In a very nice way.
In a very nice way. So now we've got to take a look at a delta that is sitting between that number and making that happen quickly. So what we've done is that we've targeted the youth in booster groups, the presidents of those organizations, and told them about the project and made them aware of where we are right now. So we have commitments that are coming back to us in the $15,000 to $20,000 range for the youth groups and the $15,000 to $20,000 range for the booster organizations, and we should be able to firm those things up within the next week. It's good to have everyone participate in this project. We're going to go out to our master list and send out the request for seats again. We only asked the people that were on the big green event. That's a list of 500. Our master list is a list of 2,500. So we're going out to 2,500 trying to sell the seats, and we're hoping that we're going to sell in the neighborhoods of another 200 seats, which would be about $50,000. In addition to that, we went back to a number of the large donors that came up to stand up before town meeting and to donate. And we said, your donations actually can come in next year because in fiscal, well, not in fiscal, but in 2014, those monies can come in. And they've met that very positively. So we have between $50,000 and $75,000 coming in from donors who have already donated that want to increase their number. They only want to do it in the next calendar year, which is, again, fantastic. You have applied for a grant of $50,000, and we're very hopeful that that will come in. And just as we've done before, there are a number of people that, believe it or not, did not believe that this project would actually get passed. And they sat back on the sidelines and said, come to me once the voters voted, and they spoke their minds. Now we're coming back to a group of large donors who were very interested before and are interested right now. So we've got a list of 24 targeted donors that have donated before to similar type projects. The way that we break that out is that we kind of take a look at the types of donors, and then we segment them. So we have 3 at the $100,000 range, and possibly more. 5 that are targeted at the $25,000 range. We have 10 that are targeted at a $10,000 range. We have 6 that are targeted at a $5,000 range. That's a total of $555,000. As I think I shared with you, Ray, and if I didn't, I apologize. When we started out our original fundraising process, we started out with a goal of trying to raise just over $800,000. And that's the way that we went through our targeting process, and we raised over $730,000. So here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise over $760,000 to get to about $500,000. And that's the only way to do it. You've got to overextend the fundraising in order to reach the goal. So that's what is going on right now, and we've got a wider team than just me this time. So we have 5 people that are on the team to get this done quickly.
That's great. Well, thanks for your efforts. And Andy, do you want to do an update? I think you have another letter in draft to run in the Journal.
Yes, well, as Warren and I, when it comes to the fundraising, we had the initial pop. Now that the project has become a reality, we will be sending out another solicitation to the Hingham Journal to make sure people are aware that they can still give. We do have on our website the donate to a seat campaign form. We also have just a general donation. Any donation is more than, we're very grateful for any donation that anyone gives, whether it's $1 or $1 million. So we're very grateful for that. So we're going to make another push in the paper. If you may recall, a couple months ago we wrote an initial draft, or there was an initial letter in the paper telling people they could donate. We were having the donate the seat campaign. Now we've expanded it to just regular donations. And we also have other opportunities for people who want to become more involved that what Warren have talked about to give a donor recognition. So another letter will be in the paper. It's going in tomorrow at noon. And I think that's about it. So thanks.
One more thing I should mention, Ray, is that along the way we learned some things that donors wanted to have incorporated in their ability to donate to us and to improve our policies from the Hingham Sports Partnership. And to that end, we opened an account that allows donors to donate appreciated stock into the HSP account, and they won't have to pay the gains that they have had, and we've already had that happen. So that's already been successfully done.
That's great. It's a very creative method.
But wasn't clearly not my idea, Ray.
Good stuff. Well, thank you, Warren, and thanks to the entire sports partnership. I mean, certainly not just this effort, but every year, in so many ways, your organization has contributed to the schools in this town and our sports programs tremendously, and we're really very grateful. And we're looking forward to this true private-public partnership that we've all been speaking about for months and months and months, and bringing this project to fruition later this year.
It's very nice of you to say thank you. And I'll speak for the sports partnership just for a second here. Is that this is kind of a private-public fundraising effort that is somewhat inclusive of the sports partnership, but also not. But just so that everyone knows, before this year, the Hingham Sports Partnership has donated over $1 million back to this town into its various sports programs, into developing a new concussion program where we test all the middle schoolers before they go up to the high school, free of charge. And we had 280 parents and kids take advantage of that this year. Unfortunately, my son was not one of them, and got a concussion the next week. So next year we'll plan better. Thanks.
Ray,
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again, Warren.
Ray, one
Any questions for Warren or
Warren,
anybody?
I just want to put my 2 cents in. I think that what you folks have done over the years is unbelievable. I hope everybody appreciates it. I know we all do. There's so many young men and women that are going to have an opportunity to play in an equal playing field and a competitive fields that we haven't been able to enjoy for a long time. And I think you guys did an unbelievable job helping us get that done, and I want to thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'll
Amen.
pass that along. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments on fundraising before we move on? It'll be kind of a fluid process, and we'll keep moving and provide updates as much as we certainly can. So the next item is 6.5, to review updated proposed budget for the project that John has put together, and you have an updated one at your places. So this contemplates the two bids that we've been, this contemplates the two bids that we've been looking at, that we will discuss more about in a few minutes, and inserted as a placeholder, because nothing's been awarded, certainly, as a placeholder with respect to the concession building bid, is the low bid for that, although we've not even discussed that in open session, nor has anything been awarded. So that's merely a placeholder just for arithmetic purposes. So you see bidder 1 column, bidder 2 column, bidder 1 being the lowest bid, and the numbers that flow from that. As you know, the bids included alternates. Alternate 1 was the lights. Alternates 2 through 5 are included, and you see the various numbers represented for those. Also have placeholders for contingency, legal, which we'll probably have to discuss because that seems a little low, but
Okay.
we can get back to
Yep,
that.
I wanted to put a placeholder
We'll
in
come
there.
back to that, and it's good
Okay.
to put a placeholder, absolutely. Other soft costs. And then the next column, funding sources, obviously. John, do you want to talk about this in any more detail?
Yeah, sure. I just call your attention to the placeholder I did put in for legal, and then I did a little bit additional work on the project management piece. Did talk to a potential OPM, and then also talked to the town engineer to get a better idea of what the project management aspects of the project may be. So, you know, along with that, I've actually increased that project management from 36,000 that I had last week to about 52,000. Then also on the funding piece of that, you'll notice down in the funding section where I have the funding, the town funding pieces, I had the CPC. The Article 3 from the special town meeting 2011, the design article, will be able to fund that 16,590. So, you know, that won't be needed, so really we're sort of reduce the overall project management budgeted expense right now. It's just an estimate, of course, you know, for the project at this time. I based on last week's meeting and Warren's letter of town meeting, I had added $670,000, which is antiquated now.
Right.
And then also, you know, so I can update that with the 739 that's been collected. And then also, we did collect some additional seat money this week, so that number's been changed to 28,250. You know, so leaving those, the project funding balances, you know, we're looking for, on the two bidders, 549 or 658. And with the difference between those two bids being $108,000. Of course, that number didn't change.
Okay. So, it's obvious that, you know, based on the bids that we have in, there is a shortfall. You know, we discussed, I think a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, you know, the options that we have in front of us. You know, possible additional value engineering, which could result with, and with specific focus on the concession building, which would then trigger a redesign and perhaps rebidding if we're not happy with the numbers or if we're unable to secure additional fundraising to cover the cost. So there's some things to look at, and the concession bids, as I indicated before, we haven't really talked about those. Gale Associates is still in the process of reviewing the bids to identify the lowest eligible and qualified bidder, checking references, DCAM certifications, things of that nature. So we can, I think, expect to get a recommendation from them before our next meeting, so that we can address that if we're in position to do so. Any questions on these numbers? Comments? Certainly the increase in fundraising is encouraging. So let's see if it's, what's that, 30, so 69,000, so the delta.
Puts bidder one at 489.
Right.
And bidder two, I think, at 590, or no, 590.
89.
89, yeah, 590, rounding.
Right. Great. So we do have some work ahead of us, one way or the other, whether it's fundraising or addressing the design, which, you know, we've talked a little bit with Gail about what we might be able to do with the building if we were so inclined. That would involve a little bit of a workaround with respect to some of the electrical if the building were to be delayed because of a redesign, because of rebidding, or if we were just to hold off on that aspect of it, even if we didn't rebid or redesign in terms of commencement. You know, it seems clear that no matter which bid for the fields portion that we end up going with, we do have sufficient money in hand to begin that work, and that's important because there are certain items that are lead time items because they're specially designed for our project and our specifications. So that's encouraging, at least the main part of it that we had hoped to have up and running this fall. We will be able to have up and running this fall if all goes well. So.
What's our recommended start date for the field part of the project?
I think we talked about right after graduation.
And how about for the amenities building?
That would have been, you know, it would have been concurrent, yeah, but, you know, but that's not posted yet. I mean, we have the field, we know what the phasing schedule for the field is. Until we know what the concession is, then, you know, if it didn't start June 3rd, it would not be the end of the world, the concession building.
Okay. Anything else on the numbers right now?
Nope. It's time to move on.
Okay.
Right, just a question.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Kate Boland, 338 Main Street. I was just curious, what are the bids? How long until you have to respond to them? Do you have 30 days, 60 days? And sports partnership's incredibly great on giving this money, but I recognize it's kind of fluid and some's next year. How much do you need to have before you respond to these bids, and what are they?
Sure. The bids for the fields, portion, there were two bids. The low bid is $4,177,000. The second low bid is $4,283,000. And then there were alternates for certain things that were separately listed. For the concession, we're still in the process, and I think we feel pretty comfortable that the fields will be between one of those two low bidders, it would seem. With respect to the concession, I think our engineer is still evaluating right now the 3 lowest bidders, the lowest of which was $674,548 for the concession building. So that actually came in about $125,000 higher than what we had carried as a cost estimate for. So like I said, the bids came in a little bit higher than we had anticipated, unfortunately. So that's why the numbers are the way they are. With respect to timing, we opened the fields bids on March 29th, and we have, how many days again? 60, correct.
Chapter 3039M doesn't speak to the timing, but, yeah.
Approximately 60 days.
Generally 60 days, yeah.
And with pushing out the funding from sports partnership to some till next year, like, how much do we need? Where's our gap? And is there a limitation in terms of, if people are, we hope, like Warren says, whenever you do any type of fundraising, you overcompensate because even people that pledge things might not come through at the same level. I was wondering.
Sure.
Is that going to be a moving target, or how do we go forward
No,
with
we
that?
have a good sense, I think, right now. The bulk of the private fundraising dollars are payable immediately, and checks are being gathered right now. And we're talking, I think, about $380,000 that's payable right now. Some checks for which I think Warren has already collected and will be turning over to John if he hasn't already. With respect to monies that are payable in the future, whether it be next year or over the next couple of years, I think we're talking about, let me just see. We're talking about $50,000 payable later this year, November of 13. I believe we're talking about $146,000 payable in 2014.
But in our fiscal year.
In the fiscal year.
But within the
We're-
fiscal
Right,
year,
exactly,
correct.
yeah.
And another $41,000 and change payable in 2015, and then $25,000 payable in each of 16 and 17. So we do have some money coming in the out years, bless you.
Bless.
Okay.
But as I said, most of the money, $380,000 and change, is payable immediately, and we should have that in hand right away. Any other questions or comments on the numbers? Okay. 6.6 is to consider action on project bid award. So I think we're only going to deal with the fields portion of it at this point because we haven't gotten a formal recommendation from our engineer. So I believe everybody is aware that we do have 2 bids, that we received 4 bids for the fields portion of the project. 2 of those have been examined very closely by our engineer to determine the lowest eligible and qualified bidder as required by Massachusetts law. You received a copy of Gail's recommendation with respect to the low bidder, Brait Builders Corporation out of Marshfield. On Friday, you also received a copy of a letter with respect to Rad Sports, the second lowest bidder, also on Friday. We're only going to focus on Brait for the moment because Brait's the lowest bidder, and under the law, the lowest bidder has the presumption of qualification. So I think, and also what we're dealing with tonight is a couple of bid protests. And we're going to get into a discussion about all of this. So, as you know, Brait Builders, and I'll just note for the record that Bob Garrity, our project counsel that we retained last week, is in the audience, and I'll ask Bob to stop me if I say anything that's incorrect, inaccurate, or inappropriate. There you go. Give me the high sign from the front row. About a week and a half ago, it would seem. Freight Builders filed a bid protest with the Attorney General's office, focusing on what they deemed inappropriate post-bid contact by our engineer with respect to additional follow-up with respect to qualifications. We have a hearing scheduled on that bid protest tomorrow at 2 p.m. With the Attorney General's office. The bid protest is not a substantive protest with respect to qualifications. The protest itself is with respect to that, what they deemed inappropriate post-bid contact by the engineer. My understanding from the process, having gone through it a couple of times and also from counsel's advice, is that the hearing will likely morph into a discussion of qualifications. And as you know, there has been some discussion about the qualifications of the two bidders that we've been looking at. In addition to that bid protest, you received this afternoon, and it came through my email, and then within minutes I forwarded it on to you, a bid protest that was filed by the second lowest bidder, Rad Sports. Essentially, in response to the letter that Gale issued last Friday with respect to its recommendation. And we can get into that a little bit further in a minute. I just want to go over what I think is the important foundation of how we approach this with respect to what the law requires, and I'll ask Bob Garrity to fill in as well. And I'm just going to read a couple of passages, so bear with me. They're not too long. The public bidding laws for Massachusetts require that public construction contracts be awarded to the lowest responsible and eligible bidder. That's the important nomenclature. On the basis of competitive bids. The term lowest responsible and eligible bidder is defined by the statute as meaning the bidder, quote, whose bid is the lowest of those bidders possessing the skill, ability, and integrity necessary to faithfully perform the work. That's directly from the statute, Chapter 30, Section 39M. Determining the lowest responsible and eligible bidder is a decision delegated to the awarding authority. That's us. Unless an awarding authority has acted illegally or arbitrarily, its conclusions as to matters of fact within its jurisdiction cannot be controverted. That's case law. The protester bears the burden to establish that the awarding authority acted in bad faith or in an arbitrary or unreasonable manner. That's additional case law. In order to decide whether an awarding authority's decision was arbitrary, we must consider whether the decision was based on a consideration of the relevant factors. There must be a rational connection between the facts found and the choice made. Additional case law. So that's the basis for our decision. Just to let you know that when the Attorney General's office scheduled a protest hearing on the initial protest by Freight Builders, it did ask us not to award, or it actually asked us not to award a contract or sign a contract. We actually could award a bid, but I would suggest on the advice of counsel that we not go so far. The only thing that I think we might consider this evening is an intent to award to one of the two bidders, and that's something we can take up later after we have discussion and hear from folks that are here. So we now have the basis for which our decision is to be made. The law provides that we have significant latitude in making our decision, but at the same time, the law gives the lowest bidder the presumption. So the presumption is hard to overcome, but our latitude is broad at the same time. So it's kind of a balance in this determination. Is there anything from a legal perspective you wanted to add on that, Bob? Anything else? Please feel free.
Okay. Well, now we've got two bid protests instead of one. Last week we only had one, so that's progress, I guess. Not really. Okay, so we have a hearing tomorrow. I would like to come out of this meeting tonight with a notice of intent to award, if you can make it. If you can't make it, that's fine. But it will be, the first thing the Attorney General will say is, well, what's the awarding authority's position regarding the rate protests first? Now, whether they also decide to, well, the RAD is invited to the protest hearing, so I think all this will get aired out tomorrow, one way or the other. But we really should be able to go in and say, well, you know, since you asked us not to award, we gave you that courtesy, we didn't award, but we went as close as we could. We gave you a notice, the school committee gave a notice of their intent to award. So depending upon what happens at this hearing, we can at least tell the hearing officer or the AG's person what our position is. If we could do it. If it turns out in our discussions for whatever reason we can't do it, then we won't do it.
And could you just touch
and
on...
I'll ask Ray to handle the hearing.
Could you just touch on the fact that the AG's role is advisory
Yeah.
and what could happen after a hearing?
Sure. The AG's role on bid protests is strictly advisory. It's not a hearing in the administrative law sense. It really is just an advisory hearing. But it is part of the statute, the bid law statute, where any party, any aggrieved party at all, very, very broad jurisdiction, can bring a alleged violation of the bid laws. And if you are alleging that someone shouldn't be awarding the bid to bidder A and instead intends to award to bidder B, that's an alleged violation of the bid laws. So anybody can go to the Attorney General's office and ask for one of these advisory hearings. Depending upon, well, the decision by the AG isn't given any merit if it goes on to court to an injunction level. However, it's nice to win it if you're the one win this decision if you end up having to go to court. But it's not critical. Judges understand that they have the right to give the important decision, which is the legal decision. But they would probably give some deference to the Attorney General's decision. So it's an advisory decision, and the good thing about the whole process is it does get rid of probably 90 to 95% of bid protests right across the board, because usually the AG comes up with a pretty logical decision that makes sense, and both parties feel like they got a fair shake, and they look at it and say, well, we might not agree with it, but we don't want to spend the extra money on chasing rainbows here. So it gets rid of a lot of bid protests. And from there, should we get more into the substance here of what Ray gave a very good job at expressing what the legal standard is, at least what I think the legal standard is. Some of my brothers in the audience might think it's a little different. I think what we're betwixt and between here is I tend to look at this whole situation as the school committee is responsible to decide who's the responsible and eligible bidder with all the information that we have today about the relative qualifications of the different bidders. And Ray was absolutely right. Please don't look at RAD and their qualifications and compare them to Braid's, because Braid is the low bidder. So first we have to look at Braid, decide, only if we decide, or if you decide, that Braid is not a responsible and eligible bidder, do we even get into looking at RAD. So it's not a beauty contest between the two, okay? It's really who meets the standard. So let's try to get a little bit more into what the standard is. The reason we're even here is well, we might be here anyhow, but in the bid specifications, there was language that stated a couple of things. First of all, the instructions to bidders did say they had a whole section called Ability and Experience of Bidders. And it specifically said that to be considered, the general site contractor shall have completed a minimum of 6 synthetic and natural turf athletic field construction projects that include bleachers and athletic lighting within the past 10 years. And it said the contractor or its turf installation subcontractor shall also employ a field builder certified by the American Sports Builders Association, the ASBA. That's kind of the stricter version of what the bid specifications say, the instructions to bidders. In the bid form itself, the bidders were told, weren't told, they were requested. Important difference between requiring a submission versus requesting. The bid form itself, okay, in the bid form, we got all the bidders submitted the same bid form. Attached to the bid form was I guess it was just one page document that the bidders all had to were asked to fill out. And this is what that says, is the bidder is requested to state below what 6 synthetic and natural turf athletic field construction projects that include bleachers and athletic lighting, which included a similar character to that included in the proposed contract, he has completed as the general contractor, and give references that will enable the owner, you guys, to judge his experience, skill, and business standing, and add supplementary pages if necessary. So that's a lot cushier requirement. That basically says, we're requesting that you provide us with information. It doesn't require, at least in my opinion, and I think everybody, the designer and Ray agree on this one, it doesn't require that the bidders had to submit 6 background information that they've completed 6 projects that had all the different elements that you require in this particular project. So it doesn't have, each one didn't have to, they didn't have to, for example, include 6 synthetic field projects, 6 regular turf projects, 6 with lights, 6 with whatever else we have over there. So this was really a pretty, very flexible standard. It said, give us 6 projects you've completed, and they should all be of a character that's similar to what we want this particular contract to provide. So, that's such as it is, that's the background. Now, Brake gave us, they filled out the form. They listed 6 references, and they gave contacts. The engineer, Gail, did what they're required to do by contract. They went out and checked on all these references. And when they checked on the references, they got, a lot of these projects were pretty old. In fact, one of the arguments is one of the projects, which is probably very comparable to what you want here, is either 10 or 11 years old. It was a project down in Powell. We'll probably get to that in just a second. And one of the arguments is, well, that was too old because it wasn't 10 years. It was more than 10 years. And Braid is saying, well, it really was within the 10-year window. So, you know, we're getting into this real persnickety type of, you know, who said what to whom. And, you know, exactly how you know, precise their different contracts fit within the parameters of the requirements. And as I was trying to say to you, I think you really have to look at the big picture here, figure out what's right for the town, who is the responsible and eligible bidder, who do you think should be awarded this contract. And I don't think you have to get into the type of detail that the protesters are both arguing for their respective positions. And, you know, I respect them for doing it. I'd probably do the same thing if I was them. But, you know, I think your job is to look out for the town. And if there's a good reason to get rid of the first bidder, get rid of the first bidder. Then apply the same standards to the second bidder. So we got, Bray did fill out all the forms, right? They were the apparent low bidder. When the engineer got into reviewing the different qualifications for these 6 projects, there were some issues that came up. And we initially got a draft opinion that had I won't say holes in it, but it's just that some of the feedback from the references wasn't particularly detailed, or it was confusing, or whatever it was. That's when we met last week, and one of the things we did last week is we asked Gail to go back and do a tighter and more elaborate check on those references to try to nail down a couple of loose ends that we could all see when we were looking through the first reference check. So we did that. Gail did that, and the summary that was provided to you folks that Gail issued on Brate on Friday reflected the additional work they did to try to determine whether Brate was correct in taking credit for a number of projects that they felt were comparable. Now, a couple of other things that are kind of related to this whole discussion popped up in the meanwhile. Actually, before last week's meeting is, first, as we said, Brate filed a protest before anybody made a decision yet, which is sort of unusual, to say the least. But I guess it worked, because we're still here and we still haven't decided who to award the contract to. So again, you try and do what you can, I guess. But it did also cause us all to look a lot harder at the information Brate gave us, and the engineer did a good job at really digging into a lot of the background that Brate claims what they should be entitled to for a number of different projects that they've done over the years. There are still some questions. I would like to point out to one thing is the school committee did issue a letter on 4/25/13 when we were finding out, when the initial results from Gail's check were raising a lot of questions about the information that Brate gave us. The school committee contacted, through a formal letter, contacted Brate and did a couple of things. One is they said, we are, some of what you're claiming as credit for former projects isn't quite clear to us. So if you can provide us with additional information on these projects, please do so. And we also, and this is important, we also opened the door clearly to provide, we asked Brate, we said, if you have other projects that you can look to or provide to us that provide you with some qualification credits for this project, namely whether you've done other field projects, tell us what they are. Because again, we're looking at the big picture here. What's the right decision to do here? And we're not saying, well, you gave us 6. At least I'm arguing you shouldn't be saying you gave us 6. One of them probably wasn't similarly analogous to the other 5. So we're going to throw out that one and reject your bid entirely. That would not be in my opinion, particularly reasonable thing to do. And the school committee did open the door to Brate to offer them the opportunity to provide more projects than just the 6 listed on the one bid form. And they did do that. So they provided an additional project on a field that was built either 10 or 11 years ago down in Howell, which apparently was quite successful. It included, I think, 4 different fields, big baseball diamond, tennis courts, it's lighted. It seems like it fits everything, provided it's within the 10 or 11-year window, whatever we want to argue about on that one. And let's see, there was another project. Which one? Stowe. Okay, yeah, there was another project out in Stowe for athletic fields, thanks, Bill, that they gave us additional information on, and Gail checked that project out, and I can't remember exactly what we did with Stowe, but I think they had merit. Right, the Stowe projects in Stowe. Well, I'll get into it.
Stowe is the one where they took over, displacing the original GC when the project was 70% complete, I understand.
But they had to rebuild because of drainage.
And they had to rebuild.
Because of drainage.
I think 2 natural grass fields.
Right, drainage and grading deficiencies.
One of the reasons for some of the confusion, if you will, on what Brate did on other projects is apparently they played the role of a completing contractor after the prime contractor went under. So typically a bonding company takes over, they finish up, they went to Brate, they said, could you finish this up for us? Brate did it, and a couple of our projects, and this is why some of the reference checks were fuzzy on exactly what Brate did versus the original contractor and when the different projects finished. But when you look at it all, we, in the final review that Gail put together, it did pick out the projects where Brate was a completing contractor, and they took their best shot at trying to determine whether the project, the facts around the project and what Brate did and what they didn't do, whether they fit within a project for which they should be credited some level of qualifications for your purposes of figuring out who's the responsible and eligible bidder. So, okay, so as of right now, well, let me see. I think things have gotten even a little bit murkier, or perhaps clearer. Eventually, they will be very clear. I'll guarantee you that one. But as of right now, Brate has given us information, and I believe this is reflective of what Gail's analysis is. They've given us information that the new Natick High School project, which I happen to be familiar with personally because I was project counsel on that one. It's a big new, it's an athletic facility that's connected with a new high school project. Came out very well. It's a big turf field, all sorts of bleachers. We all agree that it's definitely a good project for Brate. We have the Marshfield High School, new Marshfield High School project, where that even has a little fuzziness. The fuzziness is that Brate has substantially completed the first chunk of that, which includes the construction of some very nice synthetic field, football fields and bleachers and everything that I guess they're up there now. I've seen pictures of them, and unless they've been doctored, it looks like a pretty nice field to me. They haven't completed the project, and there was language in the bid documents that you have to have completed 6 projects. So one of the arguments is, well, they really didn't complete that project, but so you can't give them any credit. I don't know. Personally, I don't buy that argument for all the reasons I just
And
said
Bob,
previously.
just to touch on those two, because I think Natick and Marshfield are probably the most analogous, if you want to use that word, to our project. The architect on both of those projects is AI3, which is also the architect that we had for East School and currently on the middle school project. Incidentally, Brate Builders happens to be the general contractor on our middle school project and is doing a terrific job right now for us. But just to point out, when we learned that they had listed Marshfield as one of the representative experiences, I reached out to AI3 because I was curious, because I had thought that they were on the same stage, at same time frame with our middle school project, because they started ours first and then went down and started that. But apparently they accelerated the athletic portion of it because they wanted the fields and other attributes done for this fall. So my understanding from folks from AI3 is that they are just about finished, not quite finished, but just about finished with the bulk of the athletic complex in Marshfield. So, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, that could be used as representative experience. But
Okay, to continue, we looked at one of the projects they contended they did the athletic work on was Silver Lake High School. For reasons that are mystifying, the reference, who I happen to know him too, he couldn't recall anything the first time around. And then the second time around, it turns out that he did recall that there were a number of fields projects that were successfully built, and everything seems like they're working good. I think those weren't synthetic turf fields. I think they were all natural turf. But it was a pretty sizable project, so I would think that would probably goes into the column of okay for Brate. On the next project was Oliver Ames High School, and on this one, to this day, I don't know if they've built any projects over there. I think we left it as they may have completed a couple of projects. Fields there. Do you remember that one, Bill?
I do, and as it said in my letter, when we first spoke to the Gilbane project manager, he said that there was no outdoor athletic facility involvement. The second time we talked to him, he recalled that Brate may have constructed a natural turf soccer field, softball field, and baseball field, and noted that the fields were in good condition as far as he knew. Because there was some question, we called Castle Booze, who was the architect, and we talked to Michael Mahan, and he said that the contract for the school project did not include any work related to athletic fields. He said that Brate did very little, but then he went on to say Brate did very little athletic field work, but may have completed a grass rectangular field and possibly one other, but he couldn't remember. And as we found out, part of the confusion is that the principal athletic facilities at Oliver Ames were built under a separate contract by Heimlich Construction outside of Brate's school contract. So, as you said, Bob, it's really not apparent to us what their involvement was or was not.
So I think we'd have to say this is not a good reference for Brate. The next project is Bedford High School, which isn't, well, it's a little bit better, I suppose. And again, I believe this one was a completion project too, right?
No, sir, I don't think so.
That wasn't, okay. Well, they did build, apparently they did build a practice football field, which is relevant. As of today, we got an email from.
I don't think that came out of Bedford, Bob, I'm sorry.
No?
We actually got an email late this afternoon
Yep.
From
Brate.
As far as our reference checks were concerned, we talked to the same gentleman, to Mr. Jones twice, and the second time we talked to him, he confirmed that Brate was not the general contractor on the fields portion of the project, that it was a separate contract, and that Heimlich Landscape and Construction had performed the field work. All we know is what we checked with the reference. We asked him very directly twice, and he answered us consistently both times.
Okay, well, as of today, and you know, if the Brate folks want to kick in here,
Right.
then that's fine. Probably when I'm done, Hugh, is on, today we got I think this was the email chain, is that the email chain? An email chain indicating that they had built a practice football field. It gave the name of one of the owner's representatives out there. I'm not sure if it was Jones or not.
I think it was.
Right, is that the same name, Jones? So, I get, I don't know. It just seems hard to believe we're still trying to figure out who built some of these fields, but they do Brate contends that they did build a football field out there, a practice football field. At the Bourne Elementary School, which is another project that Brate indicated they did work on. When Gail checked it out twice, the reference down in Bourne indicated that it really wasn't an athletic field, it was just kind of a play field for the kids in the elementary school that, you know, they used as recess or things like that. Now, Brate today indicated that, and this is another email that Hugh Gorman sent over for Brate, that it was an 8 to 10 acre group of athletic fields that are used for multi-purposes. I don't know.
Based on the email today, I went on Google Earth, and there is one full-size soccer pitch there, it appears.
Just 8 to 10 acres though, that's a lot of acres.
A typical soccer field is 90 to 100,000 square feet.
So Robert?
That's 2
Okay.
acres.
That's 2 acres.
It's 2 acres.
Okay, 2 acres, okay, then that might make sense. So apparently they did build something out there that's a field, right? Okay. Let me see. Post-bid references, mentioned the Hull Street Park, that, you know, besides the 10-year window question, it seems like that's a very good fit with everything but the synthetic turf. And let's see, I think we talked about the Center School in Stowe, the turf football field, and the youth soccer field is what they apparently built out there, but they were the completing contractor, but Brate contends that they had to come in when the first contractor went under, and they basically had to rip up the existing fields, or a big chunk of them, and rebuild them per specifications, and I guess they're all doing quite well right now. So, that's what we have. And I'm almost afraid to ask anybody to give us any more, because who knows where that one might lead us. But basically, that's the information. We've got a total of, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different projects, and I guess there are 2 maybes, or even not. You know, we don't accept the reference check on 2 of those projects. But again, I'm not hung up with the, you know, my brothers maybe, but I'm not hung up with the 6 comparable projects argument. I don't think there's anything magic to 6. If it's 5, do you throw him out if he did a great job on 5? I wouldn't think so. You know, if he did 7 and you think he did a stinking job on 6 of them, then you don't give him the job. It's that simple to me. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Well, that's really, I guess that's it. I'll open it up for any questions you might have, and Bill can certainly talk about any of the actual contacts. I didn't contact anybody. But I think we're really looking at, based upon the information that Braid has put together, most of which has been confirmed by us, with a couple of gray areas, do we feel that they're entitled to the award of this particular contract? Hugh, did you want to add anything on any of these points? It's Hugh Gorman, who represents Braid. I've been in contact with them from time to time to try to clarify some points, and we have Ed Quinlan over here too, who I'm sure has something to say, who represents RAD.
I may have a comment. Dr. Gallo and members of the school committee. First, as a resident, I think this is awesome that we're finally building some fields here, and the town definitely needs them. The fields that the kids are playing on now are fields that I played on when I went to Hingham High School, and while there's certainly a lot of great memories out there, they need to be done. With respect to what Mr. Garrity mentioned, I think it's important to note that with respect to all of the references that are in your package, there are no negative references in the package, in the letter from Gale Associates. The presumption is in favor of my client, Braid, that they are the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. Now, this is a general bid, and forgive me if I'm not trying to talk down anyone, but maybe you don't have backgrounds, all of you, in construction. But a general bid is you've got a general contractor that subs out the work to other contractors. An issue has been raised with respect to a certified field builder being used for the project, and it has been said that Braid is not a certified field builder. We are going to have a subcontractor that's a certified field builder build the field. And Braid has done that in the past. And I just wanted to point out a few of the references that, although the letter itself talks about Braid's work being satisfactory, to me satisfactory is a pretty vanilla term. Yeah, I guess it's good enough. Nobody wants something that's good enough. We want the best, and Braid's capable of giving the best. And if you look at the references that are attached to the letter, for instance, the reference for the Natick High School, this is a very time-sensitive project. My understanding is we want the football team playing on that field next fall if possible, the soccer team, the field hockey team. The scheduling reference with respect from the Natick job, which is a beautiful turf field, Mr. Garrity explained it very well. Scheduling was clear and creative, all deadlines met, flawless. Quality of work was first rate. Would you work with the contractor again on a similar project? Yes. To me, that says a little bit more than the work was satisfactory. If you look at the Marshfield High School project, which is very comparable to what we want to do here in Hingham. Again, satisfied. Is satisfied enough to explain these types of references? Scheduling and resourcing project has been fantastic. Now, these forms are completed by Gail. I didn't fill them out, but if I did, I probably would say something like that. Quality of work to this point has been great. Silver Lake High School, both work and material were of good quality. John said one of the better of 4 projects he's been involved in. With respect to the Oliver Ames project, quality of work was excellent. Hire if you can. That's the reference. Hire if you can. With respect to the Bedford High School project, it says, was the work completed on time? No, it wasn't. It was early. It was completed early. Working with a contractor who is cooperative meant a lot. With respect to the Bourne Elementary School project, rated project scheduling 9 out of 10. Quality of work was 10 out of 10. Yes, project went very well. Again, all these references are far better than what Gail has cast them to be as satisfactory. They're excellent references. Depending on whether you look at the base bid or the bid with alternates, rate is either $106,000 lower than the second low bidder, or $111,400 lower than the second low bidder. In connection with that, obviously this is a private-public partnership in the financing of these fields. I think that when you look at the amount, the delta between the 2 bids and how this is being funded, and you combine that with looking at excellent references, I think that the only conclusion, responsible conclusion, is that Brait should be awarded this contract to build these fields. I think it is clear that they're going to be able to complete these fields on time, if not ahead of schedule. They are building the $48 million middle school project. All accounts with respect to that thus far is they're doing a fabulous job. They have the presumption here, and they want the opportunity to do a fabulous job building these fields for Hingham. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You want to go ahead, Carol?
Hugh, on Oliver Ames, can you sort of clarify what exactly they did there?
Sure I can. What apparently occurred at Oliver Ames was there was damage to the fields, not caused by Brait, but because there were laydown areas that were used as staging for the construction project. And apparently Brait went in and had to do over all the softball fields because that was a staging area that had been damaged due to construction. And one thing I want to note too, and I didn't raise the issue, but Mr. Garrity did. He mentioned that Brait is frequently hired by surety companies to come in and complete projects for contractors that have defaulted on their obligations. They're hired to do this for 2 reasons, maybe more than 2, but 2 salient issues here. One is because they get the job done, and they do a great job. And 2 is they get it done quickly. When you're out there working to complete for a surety, the surety's paying the bills at that point in time, more likely than not. They want that job done quickly and acceptable to awarding authorities.
Okay, but getting back to the work that they did there. So, looking at Gail's investigation, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
The architect said that they didn't do the work. So I'm just trying to get a handle on, did they do the work or did they not do the work?
I mean, what Gail has said very cleverly here is it wasn't within Brait's scope of work under the contract for the work that they did. And Gail is accurate in that representation, but they're only telling you half of the story.
That's why I'm asking you.
The other half, and I'm going to tell you, the other half of the story is this. Fields were built by another entity out there, but on the area of the work where Brait worked, they had, that's where the laydown area was for the softball fields. And so that was not a new field being constructed. It was a reconstruction that was performed by them because of the laydown area's damage to the softball fields. So while Gail is accurate in saying that Heimlich may have built some of the fields out there, they left out the part that Brate built softball fields out there.
So they went into repair. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, they didn't repair. I mean, it needed to be rebuilt from scratch because it had, like I said, all the construction materials and everything had been stored on that site where those softball fields were, and they had to rebuild it. So while it wasn't a separate item under their contract, it was in fact fields that they rebuilt because of the fact that the laydown area had impaired them.
And why didn't the original contractor repair it?
I don't have the answer to that.
And I'm just, if I could just follow that one up.
What I'm saying is the laydown area on the field.
Great laydown area,
Bill,
Okay.
I think.
please.
Yes, sir.
If I could just follow up
Sure.
that on Oliver Ames, and also with respect to Bedford, there's an indication that another company, Heimlich, is really the entity that performed most of the work. And just on Oliver Ames, first of all, would it be fair to say that, yes, perhaps Brate did some work either restoring or rebuilding some limited athletic fields at Oliver Ames. They did not do the vast majority of that athletic facilities there. That was done by Heimlich. Is that true?
Well, it's true, yes.
Okay.
But I don't think that they said, Ray, that we built all the fields here.
Okay.
They said we built fields here.
No,
And
I'm
they
just.
did build fields there.
And just reviewing all of the submissions, I'm just trying to get clear, because that wasn't made clear in the submission from Brate. And I think if it was, it might have been helpful from the outset in making that kind of clarification. Because based on their submission, we were to believe that they had the contract for the athletic facilities there, but that in fact is not the case.
I think that they said we built fields at Oliver Ames High School, and they did build fields at Oliver Ames High School. And they're successfully in use right now.
And with respect to Bedford, there's an indication, I think you confirmed this afternoon, and I see the email from Richard Jones, who's the facilities director from Bedford, confirming that they did one practice football field, and I presume that that's a natural turf practice football
Yes, it
field?
is.
But no other athletic facilities there. Those other athletic facilities were done by Heimlich,
No
correct?
other exterior athletic facilities. I think they did some work in the gym and things of that nature.
Okay. And just another question. Initially, the whole project, which by all accounts was a good project and certainly had many attributes that are included in what we're seeking to build here, that was not included as one of the representative experiences in the bid. Why is that?
I don't have an answer for that, Ray.
Does your client have an answer for that?
He may. Would you
Is
like me
your
to-
client
He's
here?
not here tonight, unfortunately, had another engagement that he couldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
But
I'm
you're
just
right.
curious because I think the cutoff was, 2002, 2003. If it were me and I was proud of the job, I would throw it in there and say, look at what I did in Hull.
Well,
It's
the good-
only a year off the deadline. And actually, I think in here, I think you even followed up in an email, Hugh, and confirmed that it was actually completed in 2003. So that would have been within the 10-year window and would have been a good representative experience to include in the bid.
Well, it's still a good representative experience because the research has been done.
Sure.
They were contacted, and they said, yeah, Brate did a great job, just
Right.
like everybody else that was contacted. Brate did a great job.
No, I guess I'm just trying to make the point that would it not for the additional reference checks that we asked the engineer to do, we never would have known about that representative experience because Brate didn't offer it up in its bid documents.
I think that they offered it up when the school committee issued a letter and said, do you have other projects that you'd like to respond to and give us as references, and they did. They did do that. And would Gale have concluded anything differently? Again, I think they would have written a vanilla recommendation that doesn't take into consideration the actual recommendations that are excellent.
Sure. Ed?
Mr. Gorman, as this project has been developed, one of the key components is this synthetic infill athletic field.
Yes.
We were asked on the school committee to do a little due diligence over the weekend, and I did. And unless I'm mistaken, I came up with 2 synthetic turf fields in your representation. 2. One in Natick, and it was completed in 2012. Has that had a complete cycle of use if it was completed in 2012?
I don't know if it's had a complete cycle of use. I know that they've been using it since it's been opened and to rave reviews.
And the other was the Marshfield, very similar projects, but again, Marshfield really hasn't had any use yet either.
It's a new project, you're correct in that, and again, no rave reviews thus far.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before Mr. Gorman takes a seat? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, I have a question for you if you.
Do you want to go back up? Sorry. So Bob, as I'm hearing you, I just want to make sure I'm understanding sort of how construction law, and what the case law reflects. We seem to be arguing over a strict interpretation versus a relevant, looking at all of the information. And are some things considered de minimis, like for the Hull Middle School, if it is a year off, or maybe it was a temporary occupancy permit until the final occupancy permit, and sometimes I know those things can shift you into another year, is that considered a de minimis factor that the courts would look at in terms of assessing?
Yeah, I think I'd answer it broader. I'd say that the court would give you, this committee, tremendous discretion on deciding who is
Latitude.
responsible and eligible.
Okay.
I don't think the bid documents were so explicit that to be able to reach a conclusion that they were absolutely positively bid requirements. If you didn't give 6 projects that fit right on that page, you'd get rejected.
Thank you.
And so basically, the law in this area, in my opinion, gives you a tremendous, that's what Ray read when,
Right.
in the beginning of this section of the meeting, that they give this committee a lot of flexibility, and it
Right.
goes both ways.
Takes a while for it to kind of set it, you know? Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening, thank you.
Sorry, Counselor.
Thank you, Superintendent Gallo, and the committee. My name is Edward Quinlan. I represent Mr. Domenico and RAD Construction. A couple of things I would like to point out. Mr. Domenico is also a resident of Hingham. And unlike Great Builders, his company does the work with people on his payroll, and he's going to be the one who's ultimately responsible for it, not some subcontractor who you haven't even identified yet. And this, I think, is an important distinction for this committee to keep in mind. Great Builders, while they are a very competent school building construction contractor, do not specialize in this area. This is a specialty field. RAD is the contractor who furnished and installed in extremely short order the new field down at Gillette Stadium under circumstances of great impetus and importance. What we're dealing with is a very capable job, a very wonderful job done by your consultant to verify things that I suggest to you respectfully are omissions, whether of intention or neglect in the material and information you were furnished. I am personally familiar with the issues relative to the Oliver Ames School, because that's the project whereby Great Builders had claimed improperly that it was the contractor who built the entire project, which ultimately led to it being decertified for a period of time in connection with a bid protest that was done in the school of the city of Beverly. In fact, Brait had lost its certification under DCAM because it claimed to have done $40 million worth of the work at Oliver Ames, and in reality it was only the completing contractor for about $22 million worth of that work. As your consultant correctly pointed out, the work that you're interested in, the turf fields and the bleachers and the lighting, were not done by Great Builders. Those were done by another contractor, Heimlich, and the same thing that in Bedford. Those are the people that you're going to want to have out there. You had 4 bidders who were interested in this project, as I understand it. 3 of them, are people who specialize in this area. One is a general contractor who builds buildings and doesn't have people on his payroll who do this work. And this is also where your other bid requirement, with respect to a certified field builder, is essential, because they simply did not include it. RAD included it. Each one of your other bidders included the identification of the certified person who was going to be performing this work. They have not done so until such time as they select a subcontractor. Again, this is post-bid, and this is where it's troublesome. Your bid specifications properly provide that this information is to be submitted with the bid. It requires that with the bid you provide this information. That goes out not only to the 4 bidders who were interested, but all of the other bidders who may have had some interest in a project of this nature, who would see that and rule themselves ineligible, saying, I can't meet this criterion now. Now, if in fact the rules are going to change, that you are not going to insist upon a reasonable following of the requirements that you put in your specifications, you're changing the bid process. We use in the trade, and Mr. Garrity and I have exchanged these for years, the question of whether the playing field is level. And that's to be measured at the time of bid opening. Here you have a requirement that is set forth very clearly in your contract, in your bid information, and as your consultant has properly pointed out, that these post-bid information, only furnished to you at the insistence of your former chairman, if I remember correctly, comes in, but there are at least 2 of them in the initial requirements for which they really don't meet the criterion. And you're forced to go out and try to investigate, again, to be sure that which you should have had from the get-go was given to you fully and completely. It's not a question of hedging your bets or finding out if someone follows up whether or not you're forthcoming with that information. As you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, if in fact the Hull project was such a stellar project, there's no reason why they could not have included that at the time. And saying, by the way, the indication that from what Gail's information is that that project was completed in 2002. It's outside of the 10 years, but there's nothing that would have prevented them from, at the time of bid, when everybody could make that determination, to include that information. They chose not to do so. And again, what we're getting involved with now is, an after-the-fact effort to qualify once they determine that, in fact, the bid is advantageous to them. Keeping in mind that since they did not necessarily satisfy your criterion at the time of bid opening, that also gave Brait an opportunity to walk away. If in fact they had left, $1 million on the table, and you were desirous of taking their bid at the low bid, they'd be the first one saying, wait a minute, our bid is not acceptable. We're entitled to walk away from it and not lose our deposit because of the fact we don't meet your criteria. Sorry, we don't have a certified field installer. Sorry, we don't have the 6 projects in 10 years. So this is where the playing field gets tilted. This is where, and then these are variations and minor matters, but in a larger spectrum, the Attorney General's office has made a determination that while there is a considerable amount of discretion in awarding authorities with respect to non-statutory type of requirements, there is very little discretion for awarding authorities to turn around and change the rules after the bids have been opened. You can't say we insist on receiving this information at the time of bid and then change it and say, okay, now we're going to allow you post-bid to qualify. Everybody should be judged at the time when the bids are submitted. That's what Mr. Delmonico did. That's what the other 2 bidders did. They all made a conscientious effort to submit to you fair and reasonable proposals full of the accurate information that you were entitled to at the time of bid opening and not make the effort to come in after the fact. So it is very clear that the criterion that you requested have not been satisfied. You were looking for information with respect to synthetic and turf and natural grass fields. What you have furnished after, pulling of teeth, is that they have one, maybe two projects that have synthetic turf, and the rest are all natural grass, one being a soccer pitch. That again seems to be exaggerated as to its size, a soccer field of 2 acres as opposed to 8 to 10 acres. So we respectfully suggest to you that in fact the bidder who is the lowest responsible and eligible bidder is the one that you should award the contract to. While low price, and I certainly understand the attraction of the low bid, but the cases have consistently held that an awarding authority cannot ignore its requirements, solely for the purpose of obtaining the lowest bid. The bid project requires that you award, and the statutes require you award to the lowest responsible and eligible bidder. And as you correctly pointed out, Mr. Chairman, possessing the skill, ability, and integrity necessary to undertake and perform the work. This is where we respectfully suggest that the bid protest that Brait has summarily filed will fail, and that in fact they are not the proper bidder to receive this work, that they are not the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. And I'll take any questions. Yes.
Can you give me an example of a project that you had a challenging drainage issue with that I didn't see that in the references?
May I ask Mr. Delmonico to respond directly?
They're all on.
Sure, Rob.
They're all on.
Rob, why don't you come up here?
They all have
Rob,
challenging.
sorry, you just state your name and address.
Rob Delmonico, RAD. They all have challenging draining project.
I thought we were just talking qualifications of grades.
Systems. When you build a synthetic turf field, it's imperative that you put in a free draining stone and a drainage system that can collect the rain, water, and get it away from the field as soon as possible. So every project we build has an extensive drainage system.
Okay, and what about the natural turf fields? You're obviously familiar with the challenges in here.
Yes. There's natural turf fields that you would do at a regular school, a lot of school projects that have loam. Then there are athletic field projects that have root zone material. They're two different things. One's an engineered system. You have to have drainage in all of those systems when you have a root zone, because you have to get the water through the sand. So they're higher performing fields, which is the fields that are going to be built here at Hingham. They're all engineered systems. So they're not a typical loom that you could put in your backyard at some of the smaller secondary schools. And each one of those root zone systems has to have a drainage component with it.
Okay, so basically, whenever I asked, do you have an example that?
Every project
everyone
we've done
has them?
has an extensive drainage system, every single project.
Okay.
And do you perform all those yourself?
Everything, we self-perform everything.
Ed, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
As the awarding authority, don't we have the discretion to take relevant portions of representative experience into account? Let me just break it down. So it looks like we've got a total of 8 examples of representative experience, some of which were provided after a supplemental check. Natick, Marshfield, Silver Lake, Hull, Oliver Ames, Bedford, Bourne, and Center Stowe. So that's 8. So don't we have the discretion to look at any in the group and pick and choose representative experience that we deem appropriate under the circumstances? And if all of the references are positive, don't we then have the discretion to act based on that?
I would suggest respectfully that under these, the information that you have requested from the bidders at the time of bid opening is what is critical. You are looking for, it would be very simple for all of us to keep the bid opening and qualifications open after the fact. But there is a cutoff period of time. There is a time when the bids are open, and that's the time at which the qualifications should be established and should be clear. Now, yes, indeed, if you had questions about supplemental information that you wanted to clarify a point, that's one thing. However, turning around and post-bid attempting to meet the criteria is different, because what you're doing is you're not clarifying the information that was given. The bidder had plenty of time to make a determination how many projects and which projects they chose to include. At my understanding, at the time of bid opening, and Mr. Delmonico can confirm this to me, I think that the turf in Natick wasn't down, is that correct? Marshfield.
There was no turf down.
So it was not a completed project. And again, with a great deal of respect, I know how difficult this is. You didn't ask for projects that were partially done. You asked for projects that were completed, and completed has a specific meaning, which is why I commend the investigation that Gale did, because they looked at the criterion that was established and that all bidders relied upon, that of completed projects. So I hope I've answered your question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Quinlan?
One question.
Certainly.
If I heard Bob correctly, you said you were not hung up with the 6 qualification argument?
Right, not as a mandatory requirement.
Okay. So you're arguing.
Stuck by live or die. Right.
So just for clarification, our attorney has said that he's not hung up with the 6 qualification argument to live or die. But
And he and I have had a respectful disagreement over issues like this for 30-plus years, I think. I don't necessarily concur that, in fact, it's as flexible, because there are requirements for public bidding. There are requirements of the statutes that say, qualification of the bidders at the time of the bid opening is the cornerstone. You look at everybody at that time, and while it may be advantageous to a committee, and I understand it's a very difficult job that you have to make a decision about spending arguably $100,000 more than the bid, but I suggest if you keep changing the rules to accommodate the lowest bidder, you call into question the integrity of the entire process. And that's where I suggest respectfully that you have to draw the line and say, no, it's unfortunate, but at the time of the bid opening, you didn't satisfy these criteria.
And the criteria you're saying that they did not satisfy was 6?
6 eligible projects that satisfy your requirement to have completed within the past 10 years.
Okay. I was just making sure I understand.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think just to follow up, it doesn't necessarily, because Bob has indicated, it doesn't necessarily have to be 6, but I think you'd also look at the quality of the projects, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4, what they included, what they didn't include, not only the number, but the attributes of those projects, then the references, and all of those things combined.
And again, my only point is that if you start opening up qualification issues post-bid, then Mr. Domenico could submit in, the hundreds of projects he's done. At some point in time, you have got bids and bid opening dates and requirements of making a determination for that purpose.
Mr. Gorman, I had a couple questions for you, if you wouldn't mind, just to follow up. Thank you. The initial bid protest that you filed on behalf of Bright Builders had to do with post-bid communication, is that correct?
Post-bid communication relative to subcontractor usage on the job, not relative to the general bid that was submitted.
Right. So my understanding was that our engineer made a call, which it indicated to us that it often does on jobs similar to this, to inquire as to subcontractors that Bright might intend to use without an obligation, just to kind of get a sense. Is that correct?
My understanding is there was a form called a supplemental request form that was sent. I know it was sent to my client. Whether it was sent to the second low bidder, I don't know. But yeah, it's attached to our bid protest.
Okay.
The form, both the form itself that was blank and the form that was completed by Brady and resubmitted.
So your contention is that type of post-bid communication is improper, but the type of post-bid communication that we've been talking about, which is the follow-up reference checks, the additional information. In fact, if not for that post-bid communication, you wouldn't have given us Hull as a representative experience, right? So you're saying that that's okay, but the other isn't? I'm just trying to
I think-
understand the law.
Again, I think it's two different issues. I think you have, this is a general bid. It doesn't matter who our subcontractors are. This was not a job where the town went out ahead of time and said, well, let's pre-qualify all the bidders ahead of time and then solicit bids, okay? That's different than getting a general bid in the door and then following up to see if the references check out. And as far as issues of integrity being raised here vis-à-vis Brake Brothers, again, I think that's wholly inappropriate. Issues of integrity, and I've stayed away from it because I wanted to focus on the fact that my client is the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. But Gale Associates has RAD on their website and references working on jobs with them.
Well, I don't think
Gale,
that's...
well, no, it is, Mr. Estes, it's appropriate because I want everybody on the committee to know that. I don't think that Gale Associates is capable in this circumstance of being unbiased relative to their decisions.
I don't think that's an appropriate line to follow.
Well,
So I'm going
again,
to stop you,
okay.
Mr. Gorman, respectfully, okay?
Again, but
That's not an
issues of
appropriate-
integrity, I think it's important to note that there's an appearance of issues here.
I understand that, and let's just keep this civil. And
It's very civil.
I'll also indicate that in the April 29th response to our letter, Brake Builders accused us of corruption. So we're not going to go anywhere near that. That's an improper line to follow. So, Mr. Gorman, please.
Again, I don't know that the committee was accused of corruption. I think it said an appearance.
Okay. One more question, if I would, please. Obviously, Natick and Marshfield were school building projects which included athletic facilities.
Yes.
Okay. If Brate, and Brate is well known as being a school building general contractor, correct?
Yes, they are.
Can you just give me your opinion, obviously, if would Brate have bid on an athletic facility job in Natick and in Marshfield if they didn't include school building projects? What I'm getting at is they bid on those because they were school building projects that included athletic facilities. But would they have bid on them if they were just athletic facilities and not school building projects?
They bid on the Hingham project, and they're building a school building project right down the street, so it's hard to speculate, but if it was a large project, $4 or $5 million project like it is here, I think the answer would be yes, they would.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Bob?
Just a couple of
Yep.
pieces. What Ed Quinlan's really trying to do, Rad's trying to do, is make this a pre-qualification type of situation. That's not the law that we follow here. The building construction law is the pre-qualification law. This is just the lowest responsive and eligible bidder. And of course, you've got the right to review the qualifications that the bidder submits to you after the bid. And the fact that we had a form that they had to list 6 projects, that doesn't tie you up to be stuck with the 6 projects. So I just want to clarify that point. It's not a legal obligation at all, in my opinion, and we can respectfully disagree with one another.
Can you
on
restate that again?
Yeah. What Rad's attorney was basically taking the position that is, you're locked into those 6 projects, live or die. But that's not what the law says. The law says, well, first of all, on Public Works bid laws, Chapter 30, Section 39M, it is common that you open the bid, and then after you open the bid, then you check out the bidder, the contractor. The only thing that makes this situation a little different is that we included in the bid document itself, we said list 6 projects you think are comparable to the type of work you're going to do here. So Gail did that. A couple of them raised some questions. And when we asked the questions, we got some of them checked out okay, some are still kind of dubious, and other ones, then they came up with more projects that seem to have satisfied different components of the project. And this might sound like a real little thing, but there are only 6 projects listed on that form. When a bidder sees 6 projects listed, they fill out 6 projects. They don't give you 20 projects, even if they had 20 projects. And of course, RAD could have probably given you 100 projects because they do this all the time. Then just one other point is there's been a lot of discussion here about how RAD specializes and does a great job apparently in building fields. In all due respect, the contract that we bid allowed a general contractor like Brait to submit a bid. It did not restrict the contractor to being a specialist in field construction work. They had every right to decide that they would bid it as a general contractor and they would hire competent subcontractors to carry out the work. And one piece of that, from Brait's perspective, and it does make sense, is the contract required them, the contract documents required the contractor to employ. That means after they've not, it didn't say you have to have somebody on your payroll who is one of these certified builders, field builders. It just said it's a contract requirement that they will be required to employ a certified builder. They say that they will hire someone or use someone from one of the specialty subcontractors to fulfill that test. They had a right to do that. Now, the bid qualification sheet, where the six projects were listed, they did have a space to fill out the person who would be your certified builder, and they couldn't fill that out. They filled it out with a gentleman's name who wasn't a certified builder according to this ASBA standard. But their response to that was, well, we don't know exactly who the subcontractor we're going to hire yet. So once we do that, we understand it's a contract obligation and we will provide one to you. Sounds like a pretty reasonable explanation for that point.
Could you maybe just review for us what could happen based on decisions that we make, one way or the other?
Sure. If you decide that Brait is that you have an intent to award to Brait, then we would take that position and present that was a justified decision at tomorrow's hearing. The AG will probably issue a decision within about 2 weeks or so. Not sure how quickly they're doing things now. And that would, if we want to hold off on the award until then we could just sit back and wait to see what the AG does. If we were to make that decision, that a notice of intent to award to Brait, then it could be that Brait will notify the AG and say there's no reason for a hearing tomorrow because I'm withdrawing my hearing. And I suspect Mr. Quinlan will immediately say, well, let's keep on with the hearing because we've got all these substantive issues about who the lowest responsible and eligible bidder is. So we're probably going to have a hearing one way or the other. You think so, Ed?
I think you can guarantee that.
Okay, so we're probably going to have a hearing. So then the question is, the next steps after that, it's a question of whether one of the unhappy parties, whoever it is, will end up, after the Attorney General makes a decision, or even us, we'll have to decide, do we go along with the Attorney General's position? And any one of the parties, including ourselves, could refuse, well, we could just refuse to do it and just do what we want to do. Chances are we'll give them a lot of deference to what their decision is and look at it, and if it seems to be reasonable, we'll probably go along with it. But one of the two disgruntled bidders could file a lawsuit, but there's a lot of expense to that, and they probably know what their strengths and weaknesses of the case are going to be when it gets in front of a judge. Because again, the judge will give a tremendous amount of deference to this committee, and they're very, unless it's black letter law, as in pre-qualification law under building construction or something, a judge will very seldom try to impose their judgments for the judgment of a board in your position.
Thank you. Okay, so, should we talk about it?
Straw vote?
Well, if you're talking about a straw vote, we're only talking about whether whether any of us or all of us or some of us agree that Brait has sufficient qualifications in what they've provided to be determined the lowest responsible and eligible bidder. I don't know if we want to do that, or we would just want to talk about, you know, feelings one way or the other about the representative experience, qualifications, or anything else.
Well, I'll start it off. When I did my due diligence over the weekend, I'm repeating myself, I came up with two. Let me do it a different way. This particular project, as far as I'm concerned, had three linchpins: drainage, increased parking, and a multi-purpose field. Now, there's a lot of other amenities and things we've added, but that was the linchpin. And this particular due diligence over the weekend, I focused on the multi-purpose field. And as I said earlier, I came up with two. One, I'm not sure there's been a complete cycle, and as it was pointed out, the second one wasn't finished at the time of submission, so that's a concern of mine.
Can I ask a question to Bob on that? Obviously, that's a big thing, but Bob just clearly said, the way our bid process was written, it allowed GCs, not specialty companies, to submit, and that not to be hung up on the 6 qualifications. So, I don't know, Bob, if you want to comment on what he's saying, because, I mean, he's focusing on one thing which is very important to us. We want a very good project. But I think you also stated that the burden is for us, the burden was not on Brait, it was on the next bidder.
Well, no, the burden's on Brait.
Okay, the burden's on Brait.
To prove that they're responsible.
Okay, that's what I mean,
to do
burden's
this
on Brait
project.
to prove that they're.
And if you folks decide that what they've given us for the synthetic fields is not sufficient to satisfy you, that they should be decided to be responsible for this entire project, I think you can do that.
Just follow up, I think, Bob, what Andy was saying was that there's a presumption that they're the lowest.
Yeah, thank you, we used the word presumption
Right,
earlier.
Yes, I think that's true. It's, as the low bidder, then they still have to convince us that they're responsible and qualified to do this project. But the fact that they're a low bidder, let's call it, they have standing to complain. They can basically say, hey, you know, we gave you everything you wanted, we gave you enough, and then it would be up to us to decide, but was it enough for us? And if we decide it wasn't enough and it wasn't convincing, I think you can reject them.
But isn't the real issue with the language of the bid is that we maybe have assumed that it was, that we wanted to see projects that included 6 synthetic turfs fields, but that's not how it was written. So we're kind of having to be responsive to the fact that what the bid document says does not say that you have to have 6 turf fields.
Yeah, it seems like the language is open to interpretation.
It's a little open, that you maybe could have some turf fields, you could have some lights, you could have some bleachers.
Read the sentence to me that you're referring to. I think Andy.
State below, what, 6? It's it says, I guess what we're talking about, state below, what 6 synthetic and natural turf athletic fields? Is that what you're talking about leaves it
Right,
open?
I think it's open, that we had interpreted that you had to have all the components of that. But I think what Bob is advising us is that you only need to have
Some
elements of that.
elements.
Because it was a request, not in the forms. Is that,
Well,
Bob?
I think,
Yeah, well, there are two okay, the section in the instructions it is, says to be considered, the general site contractor shall have completed a minimum of 6 synthetic and natural turf athletic field construction projects that include bleachers and athletic lighting within the past 10 years. Okay? And then.
It strikes me as a reasonable threshold to accomplish.
Okay.
I guess that's my point.
So okay, well, let me just go into the form of the general bid again. That's this section where they actually filled out the information. It says the bidder is requested to state below what 6 synthetic and natural turf athletic field construction projects that include bleachers and athletic lighting, which included a similar character to that included in the proposed contract he has completed as the general contractor. So that seems like it makes it a lot fuzzier rather than saying, you need to give us 6 synthetic fields with all the, 6 projects with all these components, which I guess I'm hearing is synthetic fields. And I don't think that's been how I've heard that was the intention before. It was kind of a merge of synthetic fields, regular turf fields, lights, bleachers, to a level that you folks decide is satisfactory to decide that.
So what you're
they should
saying
be
is if
awarded
they
the
had
contract.
4 natural grass and 2 synthetic, under that language, because there's 6 projects, that would fulfill one of the components.
Well, if it's still your decision,
Right.
whether 2 natural, it's 2 synthetics, or whatever it is. The combination of the experience that they've given us, that Braid's given us, say, is it satisfactory to you to decide that this, this is enough?
May I make one point, Mr. Chairman, just on that issue?
Yes, Mr. Quinlan.
The language in question uses the word "and," which, going all the way back to elementary school, is in the conjunctive. It's turf and grass, not or. So reading it, as a court will read it, will call for turf and.
Right. Mr. Quinlan, I understand your point. I think as lawyers, we understand how important it is to use language correctly. And I think Bill Seymour has already acknowledged that the intent of a specification did not come out in the way it was worded. I think it can be read both ways. That's not how I would phrase it if that were my intent. But again, I can read it as you suggest. So I think that just leaves it open to interpretation by the awarding authority, which is what we're doing right now. I mean, my feeling, I mean, Andy makes a good point. You've got bits and pieces, 2, 4, I don't know. But then I look at, okay, we're looking at only Natick and Marshfield out of artificial turf, or maybe completely analogous or the most analogous to what we're doing here. But then you look at the others. Okay, Silver Lake is fine experience. Hull seems to be a good experience, offered only as a supplement, not initially, but that's okay. But then you look at Oliver Ames and Bedford. I'm not clear what was done there. And Center Stowe, again, I'm not quite sure about that one. And that was an additional experience that was offered as a supplement. And Bourne seems to be exaggerated based on the information that we've been given. So, we can look at the totality of the experience and say, okay, they have bits and pieces of this, this, and this, but do we feel good about the fact that they may have exaggerated some of their experience or well, I'm not going to, perhaps misrepresented some of the experience, I don't know. The decertification by DCAM that was mentioned, that doesn't really come into play here because they didn't need to be a DCAM certified contractor for this. But I suppose you could take that into account if you wanted to, in terms of their reputation. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, and I think we've heard a lot of helpful information. I want to thank Mr. Quinlan and Mr. Gorman for their points of view. As much as I understand of it under the statute, lowest responsible and eligible bidder, we're considering Brate at this point because they are numerically the lowest bidder, and there's a presumption that I understand that goes with that they are. Certainly us to decide. I'm trying to look at the big picture. I've heard basically in the comments that there's probably 2 very qualified contractors to do this work. I feel constrained by what I understand to be my role here is to look at Brate. And I just, on the record, I think that they are the lowest, and the fact that will save the people of Hingham, the people who are trying to generate money for this project privately, potentially $100,000. Not that alone is the issue, but I just think I'm constrained based on council's advice as to what the big picture is or how to view it, that that there should be, if it so occurs tonight, I would support a vote of 10 to award.
I would like to say that what Ed brought up about the two projects, and they're so new, and that we also have a responsibility that this is to last for a long time. And I hadn't thought of what you mentioned, so thank you for bringing that up. That really, is new information that I really take into consideration, that we need to know the experience and make sure that the investment we're making is the right one for the town long-term. So that, I respect Brait's partnership with our town on the middle school, but I see this as a little distinct project, and so we have to look at the long-term as well as the lowest bidder.
Andy, you have anything you'd like to?
Yes. So, we've had both sides here speak, and I thank everyone for coming. And we've worked with both, and obviously very good. But with all due respect to the second bidder, I'm not going to address Rad, because the focus on the comments is on Brait. And that doesn't mean anything. Again, I just said that I know that both groups have done a fantastic job for us. I do agree, I do share Paul's point of view about the presumption, and listening to everything our attorney, Mr. Garrity has said, about allowing this allowed for GCs. The sheet only had 6. The certified field builders was a reasonable time that you could get back. All the references checked out. AI3 has worked well with them. So in my opinion, from what I've heard tonight, that I do feel that they are a qualified, lowest responsible and eligible bidder that has skill, ability, and integrity. So if I was to award, I would be with Paul. Or I would go with Brait.
I think based on, I've really struggled with this a bit, based on Bob's sort of legal advice, I think I'm tending to share Andy and Paul's opinion as well. I'll leave it at that.
Some of you may know I also chair the school building committee. I'm working with Brait on the middle school project, and I will tell you that they're doing a terrific job. And we're very pleased with the progress. It's on schedule for the most part, a little delayed because of some weather, but I think they're catching up. And right now tracking either at or below budget. Building committee meets again this Wednesday night. So very pleased with that successful relationship. I read the recommendation very carefully. I've spoken to Bob Garrity at length on this, and I understand what the law requires and what it allows. But at the same time, I'm very troubled by what, in my opinion, is a lack of, I don't want to say honesty, but less than forthcoming nature in the bid. Clearly, there are 2 projects which can be considered directly analogous to ours, and all signs point to them being good experiences with good recommendations from people that I know personally, and take that into high account. But there are at least 3 others that are very questionable, 2 of which they may not even have performed any athletic work. It's unclear to me at this point. Brait hasn't come tonight with photos or any other evidence with respect to Oliver Ames and Bedford. I would have appreciated seeing that. That would have been helpful to me. And I'm just troubled by kind of the process. I'm troubled by kind of a proactive bid protest by a contractor with whom we have a relationship. I'm troubled by a lack of clarity in the references that were provided. And although they seem to have relevant experience with good recommendations, to my mind, I'm not convinced that they are the ideal contractor for this job, regardless of the fact that they are $100,000 lower than the second bidder. That $100,000 is important, and I'm not dismissing that at all, because we're talking about taxpayer dollars here. And but I think Eliza makes a good point, and Ed as well, that we need to make sure this is done right. We worked long and hard on this project. We went to town meeting 2 weeks ago and got overwhelming support, 80% support for this project. And I think we owe it to the town to make sure that we do this once and we do it right. And I have significant questions as to whether Brate can perform that with respect to this type of work. I have no question whatsoever with respect to their ability to perform school building projects. It remains to be seen, in my mind, whether they have enough experience with respect to athletic facilities to be considered the lowest responsible and eligible bidder in this case. So I don't know where that leaves us.
3-3.
3 seems to be the theme of the night.
Now you know why committees should have odd numbers.
Yes. It's all Dennis's fault.
It's all Dennis's fault.
Bob, suggestion? Yes, sir.
I'm Greg Reed, 6 Levitt Street. I'm actually Brate's Earthwork subcontractor. I've been here in Hingham for the last 15 years. Some of you may know my project here in Hingham, Black Rock Country Club, which is a project I built. I do a lot of large earthwork type of jobs. I'm not necessarily a field specialist. I've built fields, I've been involved with golf courses, athletic fields, all that kind of stuff. One thing I think for everybody to remember, whether it's RAD or Brate or whoever builds it, as much as you have recommendations and referrals and all that kind of stuff, really this is your project, and your OPM will oversee the bid documents that came from Gale. And that's the specification to be built to. It's not how anybody did, RAD or anybody of us did on any other jobs. It is how will the drawings be interpreted and overseen by your counsel on the job, or whoever's doing that for you, and basically making sure that you get the product that you want. I think that really any contractor at this point is fairly well qualified, any of the 4 who put a bid in completing the work. And I think it's not necessarily a look in the past. A look in the past is very helpful to see what has happened, but you also have to have faith and trust in the fact that you've hired an engineer, you have an OPM, and he has designed a set of plans for you to build, and for him to see whoever's out there to make sure that they stick to that and the project is built correctly and you end up getting exactly what it is that you paid for. I just want some people to remember that sometimes you're not building Marshfield Field, or as much as they're pretty in Natick, and I did the work in Natick, not on the turf field, I did the other fields, but you know, all the fields can come out beautiful. Every field does have differences, you know. Rob certainly knows that everybody runs into challenges of different materials on different sites, but it's important that when you get there, the plans were correct. Gale's put out a quality plan, and I think really that either contractor will give you a quality product.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bob, any wisdom at this point?
Well, I'm just wondering what I should say tomorrow. If it's still a 3-3. If nobody's further persuaded to change the vote, then it'll be a pretty funny hearing. I guess we could go ahead and let these 2 gentlemen, you know, bang it out with each other, but the EG is still gonna say, well, you're the only important people, what's your position? And I'll say our position is that let's see, depending upon what the AG says, it probably isn't gonna make any difference on the 3-3 split here. Because three of you don't think he's good enough and three of you do, right? So,
I don't know, that could be, might be persuasive, what the AG says
Yeah.
to some people.
okay, well, I guess if the AG came down and said, well, if the AG came down and said that Mr. Quinlan's position is absolutely right, you can't tinker with, you guys set the six project limit here, and you're stuck, you live by that, live and die by that, then I guess that would be persuasive to come back to the committee and say, do you wanna go along with this, and, does it change your vote? We could do that, I guess.
But it is a 7-member committee with one member not here this evening, which is another
Right, and
factor.
just, Dennis was flying to the West Coast today. I did forward him, he does have the benefit of everything that we've gotten by email. I did forward to him, he has the letters. I did forward the protest we got in today.
Dennis did comment, because he wasn't going to be here, that he trusted the committee to make the appropriate decision.
Ray, do we have a full house next week?
I believe we do.
Never know. But
We're supposed to.
we're planning on it.
Good Lord willing.
Okay, well, if there's not gonna be any change right now, I obviously can't give them a notice of anything, so we'll just,
Are you saying that's, when you gave that example, that the AG would go with the hard 6?
No,
Is that
good.
just
Oh, no, no,
example?
no.
or-
Oh, yeah,
Same.
Okay.
that's it.
A couple scenarios.
Yeah.
All right, I was just clarifying that.
Steve Bird, I don't think they will, Ed thinks they will.
Will we be back here next week?
Suppose we could.
Well, we'll be
I'm just
here
not sure if
next
anything
week.
new is gonna happen by then, no, that's what I'm trying to
Certainly,
do.
I'll probably request that the AG's office expedite.
You will have
Do
you
that.
will have another person here to vote, which would then
Right.
break the tie.
Okay, well,
And
we can
all,
do that.
yeah.
Since Ed is effectively saying, Brad is really saying, well, we're responsible, okay? So it's not really a legal issue, it's more a factual issue. Ed is saying, you folks are being too liberal here. You shouldn't be, looking at these other projects, live and die by the 6 projects, right, Ed, pretty much? And
They have discretion. But as of the date of bid opening, that's the point. And that's, and
okay,
again.
well, if that's
I
the
think
narrow issue, then we can see what the AG
Yeah, I
wants
think
to
if
say
we bring it
about
up to
that.
the AG's office and request that they expedite the decision,
Mhm.
it's either Deborah Anderson or, what's his name?
Well, he's doing it, it's just Deborah now.
Oh, it's just Deborah? Okay, well, we can certainly try to assist her in expediting the decision. At least the board would have a benefit of a sounding off from what the AG's office may have to offer.
So I'll just have to take 2 different hypotheticals for the AG. Well, the board could decide this, the board could decide that. In any event, you'll have 7 people next week, so maybe we can reconvene and try to take it up again next week.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there were not a decision by next week, you still could have a different vote,
Correct.
Sure.
or not. Someone could abstain.
Oh, yeah, sure, you can always change
Be a
it.
new
Somebody
vote.
might change a vote.
Be a new
Sure.
vote. Oh, yeah. Start from scratch.
Mhm. Who will be attending, you'll be attending the hearing tomorrow?
I was gonna go with Bob.
Okay?
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to say on this matter before we move on?
Welcome to our world.
Well, this is my world every day. I know it isn't.
Thank the committee for its time and attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray, do you need us to?
No, thank you, Bill.
Do you want us to go tomorrow?
Yeah. I think it makes sense if you do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Eric. Good night, Bill.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The other thing that we're probably going to need to take up sooner rather than later is project management for this. I think all along, Gail has assumed that they might handle project management for the construction phase for this. John and I have talked about it, a number of us have talked about it in different ways, individually. I'm not sure that it wouldn't hurt to explore somebody else helping with project management on this. And if we are going to do that, it's something we need to look at soon. We don't have to go through a formal bid process for that.
Right, no, that's correct, yeah.
Based on what the statute provides and what the threshold of dollars is. I know John has already had conversations with at least one potential project manager, and there are certainly others that we could solicit interest from.
Yeah, if I could add, I think that it's a good idea to, it's almost, from an accounting standpoint, you like to separate duties sometimes, so it's really good to have another check and balance in the whole process. You know, so the project management would work on our behalf, Gail works on our behalf. But it's just good to have another player in the game to sort of keep everything on even keel. Of course, town engineer Roger Fernandez will help out as well, similar to the way he helped us out with the track. But I mean, the scale of this project is just way too big to not have somebody more engaged than the way we did manage the track very well. But you know, there's a $500,000 project as opposed to a $4.5 million project.
Right, and you have enough to do without being a project manager for this.
Right.
It's too much. And regardless of what we decide to do with project management, Gail would still be involved because they still have additional services to provide under the contract that we signed with them. They would still need to stay on to approve shop drawings and things like that as we go forward in the process of actual construction. So
Correct. Yeah.
that's something we may want to talk about more next week when we meet.
What's the projected fee or cost or stipend for the OPM?
Well, what I have as an estimate in here right now, Ed, is on the budget, I actually put, thinking about 20 hours a week for about 18 weeks. And, you know, I priced it at about $100 an hour as an estimate. I'm not sure, this firm I talked to Friday is going to give me some type of proposal, so I'll have, you know, sort of a better general number there. But, you know, today I did have a fairly long conversation with Roger Fernandez, and, you know, for the amount of lifting, that's a pretty fair rate, we think. 18 weeks would take us from June 3rd till October 1st, you know, and once the grass gets on there, you know, the project manager doesn't have to watch the grass grow. But early on, I mean, right from June, with the scale of this project and all the different areas that will be touched simultaneously, it will take, you know, quite a bit of time, and that's where, you know, early on, so on average, we're thinking about 20 hours a week for at least 18 weeks. You know, could it go 20? Could it go 24? Possibly. Right now, in this budget, I have 20 weeks at about $2,000 a week. Plus Gail's work of reviewing the diagrams, participating in the meetings, site meetings, and making sure that the engineering specs are adhered to.
And we need to remember as well that as we went through the permitting process, certainly at least the planning board established some conditions that the work, especially the drainage work, needed to be done to their satisfaction. So they will have some oversight on that as well.
Yeah, and town oversight will be involved as well. You know, building, when we're building the concession stand, will require the building inspector to check it. You know, and Roger will be involved, but, you know, he doesn't have time to do a project of this scale either, so. I think it'd be services well purchased.
So I would expect that we'll have that on the agenda next week, and we'll talk more about that, and maybe in a position to even
Some better numbers.
set up interviews, if
Sure.
that's appropriate, have some better numbers.
Yep.
Okay. All Next item is 6.7. We have resignation of Simon Harwood, paraeducator at the middle school. 6.8 is extended leave of absence, Caitlin McDougall, social studies teacher at the middle school for the coming school year. 6.9 is information regarding an overnight field trip. I think you had something in the packet. It's not Zoar, it's actually Zor, Z-O-A-R, and it's the middle school adventure club, not the high school.
And that's not the applicant's error, that was the clerical error here, not at the school.
Touche.
They know where they're going, and they.
Good for them.
And you all know that the Adventure Club does several activities each year. Some of them are simply a day activity and a couple are overnight, and that's the reason that this would come, for Liza's benefit, that's the reason this application would come here, because of the overnight component.
Right, and if I remember, they went on a similar trip last year. There's whitewater rafting, a zip line, things like that.
So
Sounds
they have a
like lot
long
of fun.
history of very successful trips and a lot of good oversight and good supervision and so on. So this is something that I would be intending to approve, but certainly if you had questions or concerns, that would be great.
Okay, if nothing. We'll move on. Item 7, is there anything that's come up in the last couple days that is any more surprising than what we've already gotten?
No.
No? Okay.
Here's not.
I have no new building committee report. We're meeting this Wednesday, so perhaps I'll have something next time. Subcommittee reports, I don't think we've been meeting recently, so that's kind of on hold until new assignments, and we'll set up a new schedule of meetings as need rises.
I would say that, in particular, both the policy committee is in the middle of
We are.
some important and serious deliberations. And the salary negotiations committee, we have quite a long list of things we need to complete. So as soon as we get assignments, we really need to get those committees set up as soon as humanly possible. We're falling behind on some things.
Yep, okay. Superintendent's report.
A couple of things I would mention. The May 1 enrollment, I hand it out as you do each month, very little change, as is typical this time of year. But the May 1 enrollment will be the enrollment that we use as we meet with our, what we call our staffing meetings. May 10th, Ellen and I will meet with the 2 secondary principals and then with each of the department directors and resource teachers to look at how we need to staff those departments based upon what student enrollments are, the student tally, student course selections. On May 14th, we will meet with the 4 elementary principals and looking at what those needs are, and the principals will come armed with things like the kindergarten enrollment, the grade 1 enrollment as we anticipated, and the known ins and outs. Lots of times elementary parents have already notified us that they're moving to town, or others have notified us they're moving in. So we do those staffing things, and the May enrollment is the kind of enrollment of record that we pay attention to. Also want to comment in your packet, there was a very brief letter from the Department of Education. As you know, we had lots of different program reviews this year. One of those program reviews was a coordinated program review for Title I, which in the grand scheme of things is a fairly small project. It's federal money, but as allocations go, it's a fairly small project. Ellen runs the Title I program, and so she did the review. This was a review that was a paper review, in essence, a lot of requirements for things to be submitted, and then phone conversation, and we got a letter just the other day, you have it, saying that essentially there were no findings. No findings is a good thing in program review language. We also received the draft report for the more extensive review of civil rights, special education, and English learner education. And it is just a draft at this point, but that looks to be a clean review as well. So that's really good news. And so a lot of thanks to Ellen in terms of the Title I, to Liz, and also because the special ed and civil rights, we had to do last year, the submission of all the data. So certainly, credit goes also to Ellen and to Jean Loud in terms of getting that stuff in, which was the basis for the site visit, and Liz, of course, was here for the site visit, but also for the ELE component that was done this fall. So we're feeling good about those things. And when we get the final review on the special ed English language learner and civil rights, you'll get a copy of that letter, but right now it's a draft. I want to mention the high school newsletter. I give these to you each time, and I think 4 of you have high schoolers, so you get that in the mail anyway.
I get it in the mail also.
Okay, you can put your
Yeah.
name on the list.
No, Paula sends it to the school committee.
Yeah, I think
Right?
she does.
I get
Okay,
two.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know, then it saves me a step, because
Yeah,
I've
I
been
think everyone
sending them,
gets it.
last couple of months, I've been sending them to the selectmen as well.
Yeah.
But I want to point out a couple of things in here. One is the fundraiser for the Special Olympics. You, of course, know that, service is one of our guiding principles, one of our core values, and a terrific activity where kids are supporting activities for their peers. I want to mention the counseling survey. One of the school committee superintendent goals for this year was asking all of our schools to engage in some sort of a parent feedback process, whether it be a focus group or groups, or whether it be a survey. And every school was selecting something that they would do. In the case of the high school, the counseling survey. East School, I think, had a couple of parent forums in the fall. We didn't specify what we wanted them to do, but to create another opportunity for parent input, so I mentioned that. The senior project night is always a wonderful night, and please note, May 15th is the date of that. It's a 6 to 8 in the evening drop-in, kind of wander about and see what kids are up to. The high school winning for the 3rd year in a row the collection of the sports gear, and they're going to be recognized tomorrow, actually. Not sure if it's a day or evening game, but during a pregame exercise at Fenway tomorrow. We don't know if it'll get on TV or not, but they're being recognized for that. And lastly, in here, it mentions the Global Certificate Program going forward, looking for applications. You'll remember that that was one of about 10 items that the school committee, that we presented as part of our budget, and that the school committee voted initially to be part of the budget. And then when the budget figure was reduced at the AdCom level and then subsequently at the selectman level, the school committee revoted, and not unanimously, but by a majority, that we would reduce the budget by an amount of about $156,000. So a number of these things were not then funded at the action of by the action of the town meeting. However, many of you will remember me saying at the time that while we were very happy with the budget that we got a lot of things in this year's budget, some restoration of positions, and so we came away feeling good about what we got, disappointed that we did not get money for everything. However, I said at the time that as we move forward, if in fact there are further savings that we didn't know about at the time of the budget, that we would look at using some of those savings to fund some of the things that we were not able to fund. Many of the things that we were not able to fund were in fact small individual amounts, and so I think we're optimistic that as we go forward, we can make some more progress there, but certainly the global citizenship one is one that we can fund. It's an amount of about, it's an amount of $6,200. And really it's for stipends for the folks who are the leaders of that program, the coordinators. To date, there's been a lot of volunteerism by teachers, and there's been the generosity of the Hingham Education Foundation in funding that. So I want to mention that. I think actually Carol, our former chair, even suggested at the time we took the votes publicly at a selectmen's meeting, I believe, that in fact if the governor's budget the component that said an additional $25 per student were to be funded, and that's still up in the air where that turns out to be, that, you know, we might think that there could be some reconsideration. So we have not given up on those things. I'm not in a position to tell you right now that we can fund every single one of them, but we can make progress as we go. So I think it was important to mention those things in the newsletter. Got a lot of good news information there going on.
That's great.
Hard to believe the school year's almost over.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to keep up. If you look at this calendar and then you look at the one that you received, the events and activities at all levels, not just the high school, but at all levels, is just almost overwhelming with the award ceremonies and the concerts and the end of the year things. And certainly all of you are welcome to any and all of them. Sometimes you'll get specific invitations. I think you got one tonight for the South School China project. But whether you get a specific information or you simply read about it, you're all welcome to attend any of those things.
Dr. Gallo, how does the intensity of parking at graduation compare to first night of town meeting? Are they the same?
I would say, depends on which town meeting, but I would
Well-
say perhaps, probably more.
Yeah.
Because what
Graduation?
happens at graduation is that the students all have to come early, so you've got 250 seniors who are all coming in their cars, and then you've got the various parents as well. And so we have more than, you know, a big town meeting would be 1,800, 2,000 people, as we just had, and we have more than that at graduation. Unless graduation is inside, when we, on the honor system, ask people to bring only 3 guests.
So we're on top of the alternate
I think we
extended
are,
parking,
and we have,
okay.
you know, we have police details, and the difference too is it's during the daytime. So people aren't as reluctant to park further distances, they're not as reluctant to use the far field. We have never had to use parking at the church, for example. And everyone is essentially coming at the same time. If you don't come at the same time, you're late. One of the issues with town meeting is people are coming at different points, and then it's not clear what parking is available for people who come later.
It's a mad dash.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't think we need an executive session this evening.
Do not-
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would so move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Job with a lot of difficult issues, folks, even